What if the cheapest weapon on the battlefield could bankrupt the richest nation on Earth, and one country already figured out how to stop it? David, picture this scenario. An adversary launches a drone that costs less than a used car. The defending nation fires back with a missile worth more than a luxury apartment. Multiply that exchange by hundreds, then thousands. You are not watching a military engagement anymore. You are watching an economic demolition. For nearly a decade, that exact arithmetic locked the Gulf states into a losing position, spending fortunes to neutralize threats that cost almost nothing to produce. And then a country that had been fighting for its own survival stepped in and rewrote the formula entirely. What unfolded at the close of March 2026 is arguably the most consequential geopolitical realignment the Middle East has seen in a generation. Ukraine, a nation that Russia attempted to wipe from the map, formalized 10-year defense agreements with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, deployed more than 200 battle-tested anti-drone specialists across Gulf territory, and began neutralizing Iranian drone threats in real time. The weapons Ukraine used? Not the kind that drain a treasury. Ukrainian-built interceptors priced between $2,000 and $6,000 each. The same aerial threats that terrorized Ukrainian cities for 4 years are now being hunted down in Iran's own strategic backyard by the very people who spent those 4 years learning exactly how to destroy them. Let us start at the foundation. In 10th place, the mathematics of aerial warfare were completely broken. Iran could manufacture and launch a Shahed drone for somewhere around $20,000. Gulf states defending oil infrastructure and urban centers had essentially one available answer: the Patriot interceptor system, at roughly $4 million per shot. That is a cost-exchange ratio of 200 to 1. Tehran did not need battlefield victories to achieve its strategic objectives. It simply needed to keep the launch orders coming, one drone at a time, draining enemy stockpiles and national budgets simultaneously. The attacker was not trying to win the war. It was trying to win the invoice. As analysts reviewing the conflict economics observed, the mathematics of that arrangement effectively guaranteed that the defending nation would eventually run out of the will, or the money, to keep firing. The equation needed a complete redesign, and no one in the traditional defense world had produced one. Number 9. Iran transformed cost imbalance into an operational doctrine. By early 2026, Iranian forces had launched barrages totaling more than 12,200 projectiles, drones and missiles combined, targeting Gulf infrastructure, Israeli territory, and American military positions. The strategy was never about precision. It was about volume. Every wave forced defenders to fire high-value interceptors. Every volley chipped away at stockpiles that could not be replenished fast enough. Think of it less as a military campaign and more as an engineered financial siege, designed to exhaust the defender before a single ground position changed hands. The goal was saturation. Overwhelm the sensors, overwhelm the launchers, overwhelm the budgets. Even nations with significant financial reserves began confronting a hard mathematical ceiling, and that ceiling was closing fast. Number 8, the production bottleneck no one wanted to talk about. In 2025, Lockheed Martin delivered approximately 600 Patriot PAC-3 interceptors to the entire global market. 600 missiles, shared among nearly 20 nations, all of whom faced variations of the same drone swarm threat. Against an adversary capable of launching thousands of Shaheds in a single sustained campaign, even the wealthiest Gulf states faced an uncomfortable truth. Their most sophisticated air defense inventory could be depleted in days. No defense budget in the world could manufacture missiles faster than Iran could manufacture drones. The supply ceiling was not a procurement problem that money alone could solve. It was a structural vulnerability, a countdown embedded in the architecture of the entire Western-aligned air defense system. For years, the implicit assumption was that wealth equaled security. The 600 missile ceiling cracked that assumption open. Number 7. Ukraine's battlefield data rewrote every assumption about drone warfare. For years, the world watched Shahed drones carve through Ukrainian cities on near-nightly schedules. Iran's operational logic appeared unassailable. Launch $20,000 threats, force $4 million responses, repeat indefinitely. But something unexpected emerged from the data. According to research from the Foreign Policy Research Institute, fewer than 10% of Shaheds actually reached and struck their intended targets inside Ukraine. The rest were taken down, jammed, intercepted, or neutralized, often by Ukrainian-built systems that cost a fraction of a single imported missile. Domestically developed interceptors accounted for roughly 1/3 of all aerial threat eliminations. Ukrainian operators had turned a defensive crisis into a statistical breakthrough. The math did not just shift. It collapsed the foundational premise of Iran's entire cost warfare doctrine. What specific technology made this possible? Stay with us. We are breaking it down next. Number 6. Ukraine's counter-drone arsenal reversed the cost equation completely. While Gulf nations were spending millions per intercept, Ukraine was fielding systems priced like consumer electronics. 3 platforms defined this new battlefield economy: the Cherry Bullet, the Sting, and the Octopus. Each unit cost between $2,000 and $6,000, less than many family vehicles. The Cherry Bullet engages drones in direct intercept trajectories. The Sting functions as a mobile electronic warfare node, disabling incoming threats through signal interference. The Octopus deploys from variable positions, tracking and destroying Shaheds with real-time guidance. For the first time, the defending side could neutralize an incoming drone without triggering a budget crisis. The attacker's price advantage, the entire foundation of the drone swarm doctrine, had been structurally eliminated. That is precisely why Gulf defense ministries stopped calling Washington first when the next wave appeared. They called Kiev. Number 5. Ukraine did not just send hardware, it sent people. On the 18th of March, 2026, the first contingent of 201 Ukrainian specialists arrived across Gulf territory. Each one carried years of direct combat experience from the world's most intensive drone warfare environment. Within weeks, that contingent expanded to 228 personnel, drawn from Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, General Staff, and Intelligence Services. These were not conference room advisors reviewing slide presentations. These were operators running live intercept missions alongside Gulf military teams. Every downed Shahed carried their fingerprints. The human transfer of knowledge mattered as much as the technology transfer. For the first time, Gulf air defense was not just imported capability, it was the real-time application of combat-forged expertise. Number 4. The evidence arrived on global news platforms in real time. BBC analysts authenticated a sequence of intercept videos, each one time-stamped, geolocated, and independently verified. The footage documented Ukrainian-operated systems destroying Iranian Shaheds above Saudi oil infrastructure and Qatari urban centers. Frame by frame, independent verification teams confirmed not just the locations, but the operators, Ukrainian uniforms, Ukrainian command protocols, Ukrainian tactical signatures. This was not a public relations operation. This was documented combat, dissected and confirmed by outside analytical teams before a global audience. For Gulf leadership, the signal was unmistakable. Ukraine's counter-drone ecosystem does not issue press releases. It delivers results under the world's cameras. And that performance led directly to the next development, something far more permanent than a battlefield demonstration. Number 3. The turning point was signed at a conference table, not one on a battlefield. Between the 27th and 31st of March, 2026, Ukraine formalized 10-year defense agreements with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. These were not symbolic handshakes. Each agreement locked in a decade of joint air defense operations, technology transfer protocols, and co-production of Ukrainian counter-drone systems on Gulf soil. The agreements committed all parties to shared operational intelligence, joint manufacturing facilities, and the integration of Ukrainian software architecture with Gulf defense infrastructure. Reporting from Reuters and Al Jazeera described the arrangement as the structural foundation of a new regional security framework. This was not emergency procurement. It was a generational commitment, binding Gulf capitals to Kiev's wartime innovation engine for the decade ahead. Number 2, Russia's drone industrialization program created the very threat Ukraine learned to defeat. Back in 2023, Russia invested heavily in the Alabuga Special Economic Zone, transforming Iranian drone blueprints into domestic mass production. The unit cost of a Jiran 2 drone dropped dramatically through domestic manufacturing. But the upgrades Moscow engineered, jamming-resistant navigation, reinforced propulsion, AI-assisted guidance, were subsequently transferred back to Tehran. By March 2026, Western intelligence services tracked shipments of Russian-built drones flowing to Iran under commercial cover. The student had become the supplier, and every improvement Russia engineered became raw material for the ecosystem Ukraine had already learned to defeat. The irony requires no commentary. Every capability enhancement, every cost reduction, every battlefield lesson that came out of Alabuga ultimately fueled the threat environment that Ukraine had already solved, and was now exporting that solution to Iran's rivals. And now, the number one development that reframes everything. The balance of power across the Middle East has been fundamentally restructured. Saudi Arabia now operates a defense budget exceeding $80 billion annually, the largest in the region by a significant margin. That financial capacity is no longer being directed exclusively toward expensive imported interceptors. It is funding joint manufacturing facilities with Ukraine, built on Gulf territory, producing counter-drone systems at scale. The era in which Iran could systematically bankrupt its neighbors by flooding the skies with cheap Shaheds, forcing them to burn through million-dollar missiles, is structurally over. Ukraine's model delivers aerial defense at price points Iran cannot undercut, and at production scale, no traditional Western defense contractor can match for this specific mission. For the first time, Gulf security architecture is anchored not in American supply chains, but in a partnership forged under fire on the streets of Kyiv. The attacker's cost advantage has been permanently reversed. The defender's operational playbook has been rewritten from the ground up. One truth runs through every layer of this story. Ukraine converted survival into strategic leverage. A nation targeted by Iranian-supplied drones has now dismantled Iran's cost warfare advantage from the inside. The hunted became the expert. The nation under siege became the security exporter. When warfare forces genuine innovation, even a smaller nation can permanently alter the rules of engagement for an entire region. If this kind of deep-dive geopolitical analysis is what you are looking for, hit that like button right now and make sure you are subscribed to Global Conflict Feed. We cover the shifts that actually matter before they become headlines. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What does this mean for Iran's strategic posture going forward? We read everyone. The hunted became the expert. Ukraine didn't just survive the drone war, it cornered the market on ending it. Final word count: 1,500.